Yes, he's saying humans are already hybridized because Homo sapiens, he says, is already a hybridized being. Again, the story is of an ancient race called the Anu or Anunnaki,
Anunnaki.
here a long time ago, took
Mm-hmm.
the indigenously evolved species, Homo erectus or something along that line, added their genetics to us or to them and created Homo sapiens. So yes, humans are already hybridized, already contain many different ET genetics that come out in different environments, which is why we have what appear to be separate races on the earth and separate abilities. But he's saying the more we blend, the more we mix, the more the ancient markers, genetic markers open up, and the more our senses get extended, the more we start exploring the idea of consciousness, the more
Okay.
evolved we become because we're going back to the idea of activating all of our DNA instead of
Mm.
markers that have somehow been dormant for quite a long time. And then combine that with the idea of the hybrid children is what's propelling us forward into a new evolution to become the sixth hybrid race.
So are the hybrid children a positive, or is this an infiltration that will be negative, that won't have reproduction and emotions and the things that the Greys had
So
to?
the hybrids have emotions. That's the whole thing, is they are a more advanced type of human. So they will be theoretically a great benefit if people are not afraid of them, if people can accept them. So, I understand it's a complicated story, especially for us on Earth who haven't been taught that any of these things are going on, because as you alluded to earlier, we're only just beginning to acknowledge that there are other beings. The government has only recently talked about the idea that some UFOs really are things we know nothing about. So these are slow admissions of the existence of other
Mhm.
beings in our
Mhm.
reality. And it's just the very, very early stages of the beginning of accepting that we're not alone and that there's a lot going on out there and that we're part of a bigger galactic family than we imagine.
Mhm. What is the reason that it has been so hidden by our government or the powers to be, whoever they may be, if they are not so obvious, that's been hidden so long?
Fear mostly. And, the idea of our power structure, because we do have, I believe, crashed craft. We are trying to reverse engineer them. It's all about one-upmanship. We want to have it. We don't want you to have it.
Right.
Power
We
struggles
want the money from this tech first.
and all that. So, it's the fear of the unknown, the fear of the other, the fear of the alien force, the foreigner, and the fear that someone's going to outstrip us, the fear that someone's going to control us. It's all about negative and fear-based belief systems instead of opening up to the fact that it could be quite positive,
Did the Anunnaki fully leave this planet?
as far as I know. They were recalled because what they did, as in my understanding, as Bashar has explained it, what they did, they shouldn't have done. They weren't supposed to genetically engineer the native species at all. And therefore, by having done that to aid and assist them in their work, I think my understanding of the story is that they were actually recalled. And then the rest of the Anunnaki had to sort of guide us for a while to make sure we could sort of survive on our own. And that's where all the ancient stories of the gods come in that are intervening, with humanity and all that kind of stuff, watching
Were
us,
they
watching.
giants too?
That's more the idea of the early Anunnaki actually mating with human women, creating the demigods and all of that kind of stuff. So again, not something they probably should have done. And we're obviously part of them. If that whole story holds water, we're part Anunnaki. That's why our genetics are what they are. Why things could be very confused here for us, why there's such a mix of people. So the story isn't complete yet, but so far that's what we've been told from Bashar.
What is the link with the Anunnaki and the Egyptians? Is there any link there?
There may be. That's more recent. The Anunnaki were hundreds of thousands of years ago. The idea, though, that they spawned once humanity was kind of guided to a certain point, it spawned advanced civilizations like what we call Lemuria and Atlantis. And I
Right.
think it's more the advanced civilization of Atlantis that affected the early Egyptian civilization and started giving them the knowledge they needed to build pyramids and all that kind of stuff that are still very advanced today until the knowledge was lost. But, the destruction of Atlantis and all that caused a lot of knowledge to be lost over time. So we're only just kind of recapturing some of that now.
I'm curious about the correlation between our level of consciousness and the ability to hold information and the awareness of how the pyramids were built and rediscovering this information. Is it more of sort of like a parallel meeting place that happens with the technology and consciousness? Or yes?
Yeah. Yeah, I think Bashar has said, the level of technology that exists in any civilization is a marker to some degree of the level of their consciousness, because if your consciousness doesn't arrive at a certain level, you can't even imagine how to build certain things, how
Yeah.
to do things. Now, the Atlanteans had a very high level of consciousness at a certain point in their history, as I understand it, and they achieved a lot of things, but they also achieved a lot of things that are different than the way we've achieved certain things. So we have yet to learn how they did certain things, although we have hints that they understood things about light, about sound, vibration, that allowed them to achieve a lot of interesting things. And we just have learned to do things differently. We have atomic power. I don't think they had atomic power, but they had vibrational power. They had
Mhm.
an understanding of crystalline light power, and things like that. So, it's just a matter of how each civilization expresses what their consciousness does. The problem is that our consciousness is also compartmentalized. So we can have certain advances in technology and not necessarily be so advanced spiritually or morally, unfortunately.
Mhm.
So we're trying to catch up, I think, to the idea that that all has to be balanced out before we can really achieve a quantum leap to the next level of understanding.
Want to go both sides of that. So first off, what is it that takes a civilization out? Is there actual proactive entities that make sure that a planet stays calm enough, or is it cataclysm? Is it asteroids?
Well, yeah, I mean, from Bashar's point of view, that's what wiped out Atlantis finally was a comet hit the sea and tsunamis everywhere. And that to me is what he says is that's the biblical flood that we're recounting, is the fact that a comet hit the ocean and there were floods that happened, widespread floods that happened from that. And it wiped out the last vestiges of Atlantis. But again, Earth is a place of cycles. There are cataclysms that happen in this reality that have taken out many different civilizations. I think scientists are beginning to discover that more than a few civilizations have been wiped out on this planet by a variety of catastrophes, including meteorites. So, it's like begin again, begin again, begin again. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of pyramids around the world and temples were built is we're going to lose this information from time to time because that's just the nature of being on Earth. So let's build things that are almost indestructible that contain all the information that people will need to rediscover so they don't have to start from scratch. They just have to be smart enough to understand that this is a special structure and that there's something they can learn from it. And we have discovered, obviously, there's advanced mathematics in the Great Pyramid and other temples and pyramids around the world. And I think they were all constructed around the same time before the destruction of Atlantis, because I think some people knew it was coming again, because these things
Well,
work in cycles. So,
you say that, and I've thought to myself, what would I do if I thought that there was going to be some kind of fallout